Hello and welcome back. My name is Natalie Armstrong-Motin, and if you've been following along in these video series, then you know quite well by now my friend and colleague Esther and her book, Getting Unstuck. And
Yeah.
we're now on chapter 10, Esther.
Yep.
Chapter 10 is a really good chapter. Chapter 10 is about confronting and resolving conflict. And so many of us are, I can only speak for myself, but so many of us are conflict averse, that when conflicts arise, they paralyze us. They become our nemesis.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, for a lot of us, a lot easier to just pretend that those conflicts don't exist, and then they come back to bite us in the butt at a much later date. So how do we confront and then resolve conflicts so that they don't come back to haunt us in future?
I think the first thing I would say about that is to deal in reality. Like, what is really true? That we agree or we don't, or what are we doing? So often people are pretending what they want or pretending what something should be, or they're not really present, like paying attention to the meaning of things. So I think that's part of it. And this chapter for me there's a big difference between knowing about something. I know about ballet is different than I am a ballerina, right? I know some things about gardening and actually really being gifted at that. So it's about wisdom. It's learning from your experience and then having the perspective to look at things either from the balcony, from a distance, over time, changing chairs, all kinds of ways to think about it. But it's really being committed to a deep understanding of things. You've probably heard that one of the best ways to know whether or not you understand something is to teach it. So if you've ever walked out of a movie that you really like and then try to tell it to somebody, good luck with that, So, or you thought you really understood something about, algebra or science, or what a lecture you just sat through. I mean, there's a big difference to hearing about something. And actually, I have this happen with clients all the time. They'll be doing something and they'll say, well, how am I going to handle this with my dad or whatever? And so they want me to tell them. And so I always make them go through it. But for instance, if I say, so Natalie, next time you talk to your daughter about whatever it is, like, what you just did is not going to work. So what would be better is to say it this way. Well, that is a waste of everybody's time. First of all, when you're in that moment with your daughter again and it happens again, you're going to have all the feelings you always had every time it comes up. You're not even going to think about this. And even if you did, you're not going to remember what I said. So that is just, right? You have to learn stuff. And this is about people have to learn their own lessons. This is about being important to yourself, figuring out what matters to you, all that kind of stuff. So again, we're really getting into putting it all together, integrating, assimilating, making all of these lessons and concepts and experiences be yours and have meaning to you in your life, because your experience is different than mine and so forth. So it's like, what does it mean to you?
Right.
Like maybe, museums are like, that's a 10 for you. And maybe I would rather play baseball. It's like we're different, And so the idea is to know yourself, and once you know what matters to you and who you are and all that kind of stuff, when there's a problem, I'm not really I'm, this is not about me. Oh, okay. good. I don't have to get in, like, once you know some stuff and you can handle yourself when there's a conflict, you know what you know. You decide to be important. You don't say yes if you really mean no. You know that you don't really understand. Like, you know yourself. You don't give yourself up, and you are wise because you've been learning about all this stuff. And so if you've caused the conflict, then fix it, deal with it. If it's not about you, don't. Like, so conflict is not a thing that you have to dive into and fix.
Yeah. And then you made one point in this chapter that I really liked, and that was that resolving conflict is not one thing; it's a process.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so it isn't just that that you would call and make an apology. It actually is a process of things. There are multiple steps to it, and I suppose that this is correct me if I'm wrong, this is also the chapter in which journaling becomes quite important. Because now we've got all of these wisdom points, we've got all of these exercises that we've done, we've worked our way now, chapters 1 through 9 and in 10. And why is it that at this point in the book, you let us know that journaling really needs to be an important part of the exercises that we're doing?
Yes, and we can talk about journaling and letter writing, because those are kind of two different approaches. But one thing I just want to mention here about problem solving is that it is a process. So for instance, if you and I have an argument because we both want the same thing, there was a misunderstanding, I did something wrong and it impacted you, like whatever that is, right? We have to start by acknowledging what happened, what's my part, should have happened. But so now let's say I apologize for my behavior of being insensitive or selfish or whatever it was. And, I hope that you can forgive me, and here's what I've learned, and I won't do that again, and so forth. However, now there's also an impact on the relationship, okay? Because you weren't expecting me to be rude or selfish or whatever I did that was not good. And so I need to fix the problem, whatever mistake I made, and then I really need to fix the relationship. I understand that when I did that, it was really insulting and not fair to you. And I regret that because I care about you and whatever. So I need to acknowledge that whatever has happened has a personal component to it, right? So for instance, especially in business, I talk about the fact that you have to fix whatever the problem is with something happened for the customer, you got to make it right. But now the customer has a different attitude about me. Now the customer may not trust me as much, may not respect me as much, may not like me as much. And maybe that customer is going to come back and maybe they're not. Maybe they're going to forgive me because I did a good job of fixing and cleaning and so forth. And maybe not. So it really is a process. Like the wrong has to get righted. But there is an emotional, personal component to it. And lots of people don't recognize that, and they don't understand the importance of repair and then recovery over time. And that's a big piece.
And so that's why at this particular point in Getting Unstuck, it's important for us to start keeping a journal,
right,
and noting these processes and
right,
their effects on ourselves and others, correct?
Right. When you journal, you're learning about yourself. If you write a letter, you're kind of figuring out what happened with another person. Okay, so it's two different things. But journaling is where it's almost as good as saying things out loud, right? Because then you have to finish the sentence.
Right.
So then you have to finish your thought. And if you finish your thought, then you figure out what you mean. And that's how you start to get wise.
Important steps.
Easy peasy.
I like it. And I do really, again, like that this is akin to almost all skills. You know, when we start learning to read, you start with the alphabet, and then you add sounds, and then you create words, and words create phrases, and phrases create sentence. And soon we're all poets.
Yeah.
You know, each thing builds on the other. And so if you told me to go from chapter 1 to chapter 12, that's too much. It's daunting, it's too big. But as we go chapter to chapter to chapter, and we're building these skill sets and these points of awareness and these wisdom bits, this is all very manageable, very doable. If you follow them in sequence. I suppose you could follow them out of sequence and get a great deal out of it, but following them in sequence is just honestly so easy.
Well, Jean Piaget knew a lot about this and how children learn, and how with a little tiny baby you can say peek and they think you've gone away, right? They literally think you've gone away, or because the ball rolled behind the door, it's gone. And so developmentally, there are things you need to build, like you said, about the sounds and the letters and the words, and this is no different. So delayed gratification, all these things.
Well, it's one of the great gifts that your book offers, is that it is easy, it is doable. This is important stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. The next video, we're going to be talking about chapter 11, which is being surprised by life. So join us for the next video, everyone. Chapter 11. Esther, thanks again for your time. I really enjoy talking to you.
Thank you. See you in a few minutes.
All right.